I'd like to have a first look at Adobe XD. Adobe XD is a rapid prototyping tool that's brought out by Adobe. It's part of the Creative Cloud that you can use to really fluidly and quickly create mock-ups and working mock-ups for your website designs and application designs. So this is what we're going to be making, a very rudimentary travel website, and we're just basically going to get an overview of kind of the interface, what kind of tools we have available to us, and the basic kind of method of putting together a simple screen design like this here. So let's open up a new document. First of all, of course, you'll have to download XD from Creative Cloud. It's not a massive application. And then we're going to create a new document. Now we do get some custom kind of sizes that we can use here in this kind of welcome screen. I'm working on quite a small computer screen, so I'm going to create a custom size. I'm going to click on custom there. And then once I'm inside XD, once I have a document open, I'm going to go over to the artboard tool over here. And I could click and drag and make myself a canvas, but I've got a few more options or presets available to me over on the right hand side here. So I'm going to go with this 1280 web preset. Okay, so we can see here that we've got our artboard to work on. We can adjust that artboard size if we like, and we've got an artboard title up here. Let me just change this. Maybe we'll call it travel homepage. We can use a lot of familiar Adobe shortcuts in XD. I'm just going to hit Command or Control plus and minus to zoom in and out of our artboard, and the spacebar to move around. It's very easy to add multiple artboards if you're kind of creating fast iterations, or maybe you've got separate pages or different device screens that you're working on. You can very easily add them to this workspace. Let's make our travel website, and along the way we'll explore some more tools and interface elements. To start with, I'm going to add a bit of graphics on the page, and that's going to be a rectangle, a shape. I'm going to click and drag onto my workspace here, and you guys will feel that as you move around and manipulate an object, it will kind of snap to the edges and other objects. You can see over here we've got properties of this box, and this rectangle is going to go completely from one side of my workspace to the other, so it's going to be 280. I'm going to make it 400 pixels high, so we can work quite numerically here, so exact sizes, and I'm going to make it 100 pixels from the top of our viewport, I suppose. We've got some other properties down here that are appropriate. We can turn off our border, and we can give that box a fill color. I'm going to go with a dark blue. Super good. So we've got our kind of hero panel in place. I'm going to add some text now, a navigation menu across the top. One thing that I wanted to show you was the grid that we can turn on. If you click on the name of your artboard there and have a look at the artboard properties, we can see down here that we've got our grid option, so we can turn that on and off. And we've got a layout grid. We've got a 12-column layout grid. We can also change that to kind of a pixel grid. I'm going to work with the layout grid here. Shortcuts for turning those guys on and off. Command control colon, semicolon. So command control oh my god. Quote marks, command control quote marks, excuse me, to turn on the pixel grid, and then shift command control quote marks to turn on our document grid. Maybe I'll edit that out in post. There's our document grid. I'm going to add a navigation item, so kind of a series of horizontal text buttons across the top here. I'm going to grab the text tool and create a text box that runs across the top there. And I can type in some text here. I'm going to have a few spaces in between, or one space to start with. Home, places. This is a travel website. Something like this. And just fiddling around here, getting a little bit of space in between these navigation items. So we can style text in our properties panel, choosing a grey colour, I suppose, and we can, of course, alter our typography. Quite a lot of the type shortcuts, Adobe type shortcuts, are available in XD. Shift, Command, square brackets or angle brackets left and right will increase the size, decrease the size of our text. I think that's good enough at the moment. Command Shift quote marks to have a look at our design. It's looking good so far. I'm going to add a few images in here. Well, one image to start with, a vector image, and then in a sec we'll add in a pixel-based photographic image. I'm going to tab over to Illustrator, and I've got some stock vectors here, and I'll give you the links to those. I'm going to copy these social media icons and head back over to XD, and I can just paste vectors straight into XD. These are very tiny little vectors. I'm zooming right in there, and holding Shift, just make them a little bit bigger. Shift Option from the center, and I'm going to place these guys up in this right hand corner, like so, and I can just tab things around with the tab keys. Having a look at that without the guides, I think they could be a little bit kind of fainter in line with our text here, so I can change its appearance and its these vectors opacity. Just drop down that opacity, kind of blends in a little bit more. Adding an image into this picture box is pretty easy. I can simply go to my Finder window, and I'll have to navigate to where I've left that image. And I've got an image here that's from Unsplash. I'm going to drag and drop that into that picture box like that. You can see that's pretty easy, pretty quick to kind of crop an image in a box like that. I can also double click and go into that picture box and adjust it if I want to. Maybe something like that would be quite good. So that's looking good. another vector, I'm bringing in another vector. That's also a stock vector. I'm going to copy that, bring that back over to XD, paste that on top. So we can see that that vector's been pasted into position. Just like the social media icons, I can make that a lot more prominent. I'm holding Shift down there to constrain that vector. And vectors are editable in XD, so I can change that fill color. Change that fill color to white. Change the horizon of that picture a little bit, something like that. So that's looking good. Turning back on the grid, I want to put a button either side of that logo element. You can see here, like in Illustrator, we've got these little corner control tabs, and I'm going to make a pill-shaped button by dragging in those corners, take away the border, and give this button a color, maybe a kind of a bright green. And I'll overlay some text over the top of that, just clicking and dragging. And make that a little bit bigger. Change the style. Pop that over the top. Can also change the fill color. And we can use our align tools, just like in most Adobe apps. And also I'm going to group these guys together, Command G on the keyboard, or Object, it'll be under here, Group, Command G, so that that now becomes kind of one object that I can move around. Holding Option and Shift down, I can duplicate elements just like I can in Illustrator, and if I double click on that group, I can go into those elements and edit them. So I'll change this button, give this one a blue color, maybe a light blue, and then change its text. Again, align those guys like so. So that's coming along well. We're almost there, really. I want to create a thumbnail grid down the bottom under this kind of hero element. So I've got a bit of space here in my artboard, and I suppose this artboard represents the desktop view, and the bottom border could be seen as the fold, or where the bottom of the browser window is. If I just drag that right out, you can see that I'm left with that guide there to show me where that fold might be. So I'm going to add a bit of content. We're not going to create this whole website, but we'll add in a kind of grid of thumbnails here to finish off the tutorial. I'm going to start by adding in, well, let's add a heading for this section, and for lack of anything better to include, we'll just talk about places that we can visit. It's going to be grey, and I'm going to make it in all caps. We'll center that heading and add a little bit of kind of graphic decoration. I'm just going to add a line using the line tool. And I can style lines like other graphic elements. Holding Option and Shift, I'll just duplicate that and check it without the guides. It's looking all right. Let's add our thumbnail grid. Using the guides as a guide, I'm going to add our first row of thumbnails, just getting close to the fold there. removing the border, I'll give it a colour for the meantime, just grey, so I can see it. That border could be grouped, Command G, and I'm just going to pop it up a little bit, give myself a bit more space for the thumbnails. I will put an image in here in a second, but I'm going to copy that box or that rectangle and paste it. It'll paste it right on top, and I'm going to make that box on top kind of a panel for text. I'll make it black and drop the opacity down so that we can see through that box into the picture in the background. Once it's in there, let's add a bit of placeholder text. Make it white, a bit smaller. That will do. You can see that XD has some pretty good kind of guide system, just like the modern Illustrator and Photoshop, but it's very easy for me to center elements there. Now I'm going to group that together, Command G, and I'm going to do something, or use a tool that's really helpful for rapidly fleshing out layouts, and it's called the Repeat Grid tool. So I've got this one thumbnail here, and if I click on the Repeat Grid option over in my properties here, you can see that it's kind of handles change a little bit. And if I drag out the handle to the right, you'll see that it makes some duplicates of our grid there. Let's just have a look at the grid, and I'll just make sure that our repeating grid is in line with our document grid by just adjusting the space between those thumbnails. So that looks a bit better. And now I can just add some horizontal, some vertical thumbnails. And you can see I could go infinitely down the page like that. Very quick and easy way to repeat thumbnail elements. So I've got my kind of design in place, and I can go in and change the text in each one of these elements. And I can also very quickly add images to that thumbnail grid. I'm going to tab over to Chrome and just search for some beach images on Google. This is probably not a great thing to do in terms of IP and copyright, but you can see that I can very quickly drag over an image directly out of the browser and put it into my design. And this is just for mock-up purposes. It's not going to, go to marketplace. So I'm just using Google to quickly flesh in some visuals. You can see as I add these files, it's kind of mixing them up. If I want one for each grid spot, I can just keep kind of working through and grabbing some different, that seems to be the same, grabbing some different images to build up kind of a mock-up for myself. So there's my design. Of course, I could keep going down the page further under the fold, adding kind of more features and more kind of content areas. But that'll do for this demonstration, just getting started. The last thing that I want to show you is how we can share our work. Obviously, you'll want to save your file. You can do that. You can save your file to the cloud, to your Adobe Creative Cloud documents, or you can save the file locally to your desktop. or to your hard drive. Also, you can share your work. So just say you're working, you've created this for a client and you want to get your client's feedback. You can go over to the Share tab over here and you can generate yourself a link for this document, or for this prototype that you've made, or this mock-up that you've made. Just take a second, and there's our link generated. And if I copy that link and go over to a browser, paste that link in there. So here I've got a live link of my design work that I can send to my client, and I can scroll through that artwork. Later on we'll look at adding interactivity and links to other pages, but my client can give me feedback here, tell me how they think it's looking, or any changes that are required, or other stakeholders, other members of the design team. So that's a first look at Adobe XD. I'm sure you'll find it a very intuitive and fluid tool for your web design and application design, particularly if you've got some experience in Photoshop and Illustrator in design.